Hey everybody, it's Sensei Sid with Fields Karate. Today I want to talk a little bit about our knife hand block. It's a very common, very popular block in karate, in many styles of karate, especially Shotokan. And I want to talk about some of the finer points of karate and show you a way to drill on this, especially while we're stuck at home practicing. A couple ways that you can work on this at home with a little bit of a drill. The drill is really kind of basic and plain, but this will help you with it. Now, one of the things you're going to want to do is find a stick and ideally a partner to just hold it straight out toward you. And as they do this, you want them to point it straight at you. Now, I don't have a partner here with me today, so I took my stick and I lashed it to a heavy bag. So, if you want to tie a stick off to a tree, or if you have a heavy bag that's going to swing a little bit, that's ideal. If you don't have a partner, otherwise use a partner. But this is going to be our training aid for today. Now, a couple of things about a knife hand block. First, you have to understand that a knife hand block is not always a knife hand block. We'll get to that in a minute. But when you do use a knife hand block as a block, the way it's shown on the surface, when you have a strike coming straight in, to do a knife hand block straight out isn't going to do a whole lot of good for you. So there are kind of two ways to throw this block. And I think you'll see it better if I come straight on. A lot of times, and what you often see is that block coming from the side of the head straight out with a flick in the wrist at the end. And this can be a very good block if someone is throwing what's called a haymaker, a wild swing or a hook punch. And then you block straight into it, almost like a forearm block, but open-handed, using the blade of the arm. That is a very good block. But if someone is punching straight in at you, a block straight out is going to run right along their arm. And if you practice this a little bit on your stick, you'll notice that if you come straight in toward the stick, you barely touch it. Certainly not enough to block it or move a punch that's coming in at you. So if this was a punch coming straight in at me and I throw a block straight out, I just got punched in the face. Not a good day for me. So when you have a strike that's coming straight in, if you're going to use a knife hand block, instead of coming straight out with it, you actually want to come around with it. So this is the other way to throw that block, is to come around and slice across the air. Instead of pushing straight out, slice through. Okay? So you're still blocking with the blade of your arm. And again, you can use really from the heel of the butt of your hand down to just above your elbow. Anywhere in there is your blocking surface, but you're going to come around with it. So when you practice that on your stick, whether it's lashed to a tree or a partner's holding it, all of a sudden you realize, well, I could have knocked someone's hand out of the way with that. Now, bear in mind, this is also going to be a good arm conditioning drill for you. So don't go full bore the first time you try this. Okay, get a feel for it and how it's going to work for you. Okay, but that's the idea: is have that stick pointed at you, and you want to step in with that knife hand block, circular. Okay, move it around. If you have a hanging bag, you're going to have to reset each time. Otherwise, your partner can reset for you, and that's just fine. Either way, just so long as you make it work. So that's the drill that I have for you today, is simply to have a stick pointed at you, come in and block. Bring it back around, start back here, step in, block. And make sure that you use that circular motion on something like this, and make sure you train both sides. Train in and block. Okay? Now, if you find that as you do this, you are barely touching the stick, or as you touch it, it doesn't move very far, especially if it's on a hanging bag or a partner's holding it. On a tree, it might not move quite as much, or if you tie it to a post or something like that. But if you find that you're not getting a whole lot of pressure on it, you're probably going too linearly into that block, and you need to slice around a little bit more. So those are the two ways that we can throw a knife hand block. Each one has an appropriate use. The other balance that you have to decide in that is how fast. A linear knife hand block is always going to be faster than a circular. It's just the nature of it, and that's okay. Just understand that you're going to need them for two different types of attacks that you're defending against. So that's your drill. Have a stick pointed at you, and just practice this a couple dozen times on each arm. And it's going to be a great workout and conditioning drill for your arms as well. So that's how you're going to do your drill. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that you have to understand that a knife hand block isn't always a knife hand block the way that we think of it, the way we just talked about using it, though you can certainly use it that way. But one of the more effective ways is especially if you have something, a strike coming in that's linear, instead of chambering up and blocking this way around with it, what you will often see happen is you'll step in and your chamber is actually the block. And your chamber is more like a parry block. So you're blocking, grabbing, and then the knife hand block is a strike. Okay? So you just have to bear that in mind, that oftentimes blocks are in reality strikes. And strikes can be blocks. And this is one of those cases where your knife hand block isn't always a knife hand block. Sometimes it's a parry block, a grab, and a knife hand strike. So I hope this has helped to clarify and explain and enlighten you a little bit to the knife hand block and how the several ways that it can be used. Understanding that actually as a block and strike combination is one of the more common and more practical ways to use a knife hand block. So take this home, try it out, practice it a little bit, and get very familiar. The knife hand block, whether used as a block or as a strike, is a very, very, very effective tool in our arsenal. So get very, very comfortable with it, because as you do your training, you'll be doing it a lot. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly have. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I look forward to the next one.